A very warm welcome and good evening to all the faculty members, panelists, and the speakers and moderator. Myself, Mr. Amit Rajput. I am belong to Roche marketing team based at Ahmedabad. So today we have this particular session planned on the role of immunotherapy in lung cancer management, which is being guided by Dr. Ashish Kaushal sir with respect to the overall program. Just a few words about we as a Roche as an organization. We are very proud to celebrate 125 years of existence globally, and this is a very proud moment for us because it's been as far as India also is concerned, we have been present from several years, and this is the 125th year we are celebrating as a global presence for Roche. In terms of our presence has been strengthened with our very rich and innovative pipeline and the molecules. From the year 2013 onwards, we have introduced more than 38 newer entities into the market. And as far as the our net realization is concerned with respect to new launches, Roche has been in the forefront of many other organizations which are dealing into oncology. If you look at from the lung driver mutation perspective, we have seen a lot of recent advancement which has happened globally with respect to many molecules which are targeted to EGFR, ALK, ROS1, NTRK, as well as also the wild type mutations. And if we see, Roche has been present into erlotinib, alectinib, and also our upcoming molecules like pralsetinib, entrectinib, which are also in a research pipeline, which are existing. If you look at our current lung cancer portfolio, we are present in India with Tecentriq and Alecensa for the lung cancer, with Alecensa for ALK positive driver mutation. But we are strongly awaiting the molecules like tiragolumab, rozlytrek, entrectinib, and gavreto. So these are the three very promising research which has happened and has got an approval, and we are awaiting their arrival in India very soon, maybe in a year or 2 years down the line. So our lung cancer portfolio will be further strengthened, and of course for Tecentriq also, our newer and newer indications are getting approved. Even in lung cancer, if we see today, we are present with the highest number of approvals in India, with total 5 approvals. We already had an approval in second line NSCLC with OAK trial and SCLC, and also in the first line NSCLC with IMpower 150 trial. But now today we are very proud to inform you that we have received two new approvals for Tecentriq in lung first line NSCLC, that is IMpower 110 and 130. So we'll discuss more in detail in the today's context. And without much ado, I would like to invite our program director, Dr. Ashish Kaushal sir, to take the further proceedings and the agenda for today's discussion. So, sir, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Amit. Thanks to entire team of Roche for arranging this virtual meet on the role of immunotherapy and non-small cell lung cancer. So today we have designed our program into two parts. One is the 2 speaker sessions and one followed by one panel discussion. So the first talk would be on the management of first-line non-small cell lung cancer, especially in metastatic setting. And Dr. Neeraj is going to share the data of IMpower 110, 130, 150. And after that, we have a second talk, which is going to be delivered by Dr. Kaushal Patel, and who's going to speak about how he treated the lung cancer in 2022, especially the early eye view on the upcoming research and indications. And then we have in second session, we have a panel discussion in the similar indication of metastatic non-small cell lung cancer. So without further delay, as we are running late, I invite Dr. Neeraj Bhatt, who is a senior consultant medical oncologist at Baroda, for his talk on the sharing the data of IMpower studies. So over to you, Neeraj, and you have 10 minutes to finish your talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ashish, Program Director, and I thank the organizers of this webinar to have me on this session to speak on this topic. I'm just sharing my screen. Yeah, is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, fine. So, a very good evening to everyone. I'm Dr. Neeraj Bhatt, practicing medical oncologist in Baroda. And this is regarding the role of immunotherapy in current management of non-squamous non-small cell lung cancer. As we all know, we as a medical oncologist probably are witnessing the transition phase in managing non-small cell lung cancer. There was a time when we did not have any other thing to offer other than platinum-based doublets, and patient used to succumb within an year of diagnosis. Even today, the clinical presentation scenario has not changed. Even 60 to 70% of patients are still diagnosed at a phase or at a stage when we can only offer palliation and nothing more. But fortunately, we have a plethora of options available to offer apart from platinum-based chemotherapy, which includes actionable targeted mutation-based targeted therapy, maybe VEGF-based monoclonal antibodies, and now new introduction in the armamentarium of treatment, which includes immunotherapy. So there is an unmet need in the treatment of patients who are diagnosed with non-small cell lung cancer, especially those who do not have any actionable biomarker. Such patients or such chunk constitutes nearly 35 to 40% of patients. So if you look at this Kaplan-Meier curve, we can see that those patients who are diagnosed with actionable mutations can enjoy a good long-term survival with mutation-based therapy, compared to those who are offered only base support care, who eventually succumb within 5 to 6 months, or being offered chemotherapy, which have a median survival of around 12 to 13 months. Compared to that, those patients who are offered actionable therapy have a significantly longer survival advantage. So this is a global phase 3 studies of atezolizumab, which includes IMpower 110, which has two arm, atezolizumab versus carboplatin based or platin based doublets as a current standard of care. IMpower 113, where atezolizumab is combined with chemotherapy and has been staked against chemotherapy alone, and IMpower 150, which is 4-drug arm, which is now considered a current standard of care. So coming to the first study, which is a landmark study, IMpower 110, where patients with stage 4 non-squamous NSCLC who are chemotherapy naive and PD-L1 selected, of course EGFR ALK negative, are randomized in 1:1 fashion in atezolizumab versus the current standard of care, be it platin plus pemetrexed if it is adenocarcinoma, or platin plus gemcitabine if it is squamous cell carcinoma. As a maintenance, those patients who were initially treated with atezolizumab-based chemotherapy were further continued with atezolizumab until progressive disease or loss of clinical benefit. And those who were diagnosed with adenocarcinoma and were randomized to chemotherapy arm were continued with pemetrexed as maintenance. And those who had squamous cell carcinoma were offered base support care, because as we know, there is no advantage of continuing maintenance therapy in squamous cell CA. Now, if you look at the overall prevalence of PD-L1 expression, it was around 38 to 40% in both arms, especially those who have high PD-L1 expression. But overall, almost every patient had 1% or more TCIC expression. That means they were expressing PD-L1. Now, the baseline characteristics were almost similar, be it in the form of age, race, smoking status, EGFR status, and so on. If you look at the overall survival in both arms, the curves start separating right from 3rd or 4th month, and there was an overall survival of 20 months in atezolizumab arm versus 13 months in the standard of care chemotherapy arm, with a hazard ratio of 0.59, meaning atezolizumab as a new standard of care is nearly 40% better compared to the chemotherapy arm. 12 months overall survival was 64% in atezolizumab arm compared to 50% in chemotherapy arm, which is very significant. And if we analyze this response as a subgroup analysis, be it in the form of age, sex, race, use of tobacco, non-squamous histology versus squamous histology, or performance status. Almost at every point, the response rate falls in favor of atezolizumab, or right to the line of unity, rather left to the line of unity. So here we can see that, sorry, these slides are not opening because this was keynote was converted in PowerPoint. But this slide says that nearly 80% of the patients who were initially randomized to chemotherapy arm subsequently received immunotherapy. If you look at the progression-free survival, it was 8.1 months in atezolizumab arm compared to 5 months in chemotherapy arm, and 12 months progression-free survival was 37% in atezolizumab arm compared to 21% in chemotherapy arm, with a hazard ratio of 0.63, which was significant. Overall, for those patients who had high PD-L1 expression, overall response rate was nearly 38% in atezolizumab arm compared to 28% in chemotherapy arm. And if you look at the grade 3, grade 4 side effects, they were acceptable in both groups. Patients who were treated with chemotherapy arm had more side effects like anemia, nausea, neutropenia, constipation, thrombocytopenia, and so on, that we routinely witness for patients who are receiving chemotherapy, while immune-mediated side effects were more common with atezolizumab arm. So it was summarized by the investigators that atezolizumab represents a promising first-line treatment option in patients with PD-L1 high non-small cell lung cancer. This is a positive study that demonstrated statistically significant and clinically meaningful improvement in overall survival in high PD-L1 expressing patients. The safety profile was acceptable, and patients treated with atezolizumab had longer treatment exposure than those who were treated with chemotherapy. Compared to coming to the second study in this class, that is IMpower 130, which compared atezolizumab plus chemotherapy versus chemotherapy alone in patients diagnosed with inoperable stage 4 non-squamous non-small cell lung cancer, with a rationale that chemotherapy-induced immunogenic cell death can trigger the release of tumor antigens, which further stimulates the immune-mediated effects. Here, the randomization was in 2:1 fashion, where atezolizumab, carboplatin, and nab-paclitaxel based arm was the experimental arm, while carboplatin nab-pacli was the comparator arm. And the main rationale for offering nab-paclitaxel was to avoid steroid as pre-medication, because as we all know, steroids should not be considered for those patients who are being given immunotherapy. The co-primary endpoints were to check the investigator-assessed progression-free survival. Here, the baseline characteristics again were matching in the form of age, sex, liver metastasis at presentation, race, or bone metastasis. And progression-free survival was nearly 7 months, which was around 1.5 months better compared to chemotherapy alone arm, with a hazard ratio of 0.64. And 12 months progression-free survival was 30% in atezolizumab arm, which was 14% in chemotherapy arm. So progression-free survival at 1 year was almost double in experimental arm compared to the control arm. In reference to overall survival, the hazard ratio that was achieved was 0.79. There was nearly 4.5 months improvement in overall survival in atezolizumab arm compared to chemotherapy arm. And this forest plot shows that the advantage or survival advantage as well as progression-free survival advantage was maintained throughout all the subgroups that were analyzed. One of the subgroups where atezolizumab based combination chemotherapy did not fare well was those which had been presented with actionable mutations and were previously challenged with EGFR or ALK based tyrosine kinase inhibitors. So this was the subgroups which did not benefit by adding atezolizumab based therapy along with chemotherapy. Overall response that was achieved in atezolizumab arm was 49%. It was against 31% that was achieved in chemotherapy arm. Overall, toxicity profile was slightly more in atezolizumab arm, as it was expected that it was immunotherapy plus chemotherapy arm, and it was staked against chemotherapy arm alone. So both chemotherapy related as well as immune mediated side effects were more in experimental arm compared to chemotherapy arm. However, it was at acceptable level. So the key conclusions that were drawn from IM Power 130 study was that it was a positive study for atezolizumab in first-line non-small cell lung cancer, providing an alternative chemotherapy plus immunotherapy regimen compared to patients who were offered only chemotherapy. It demonstrated statistically significant and clinically relevant overall survival benefit when atezolizumab was added to the chemotherapy arm. It also demonstrated improvement in progression-free survival and overall response rate. Uh, the only clinical subgroups which was not benefited by adding atezolizumab was those who had already mutations and were treated with EGFR or ALK-based tyrosine kinase inhibitors. The last one is IM Power 150, which had 3 arms. The experimental arm is called ABCP, that is atezolizumab, carboplatin, paclitaxel, and bevacizumab, and it was staked against atezolizumab, carbopacli versus carboplatin, paclitaxel, and bevacizumab. The maintenance arm also consisted the same protocol that arm A was treated with atezolizumab alone maintenance because it was the only immunotherapy molecule. Arm B was treated with atezolizumab plus bevacizumab as maintenance, and Arm C had bevacizumab alone as a maintenance protocol. The rationale behind combining atezolizumab plus VEGF-mediated MAB was that bevacizumab inhibits VEGF-mediated suppression of dendritic cell maturation, which enables the efficient priming and activation of T cell responses. As well as the fact that chemotherapy-induced immunogenic cell death can trigger the release of tumor antigen, which further stimulates the immune system. Bevacizumab also normalizes the tumor vasculature, resulting in increased infiltration of T cells into tumor cells. And the last explanation that was given was bevacizumab decreases the activity of T cells and enables the reprogramming of tumor microenvironment. The characteristics were almost matching in all 3 arms. What were peculiar was almost 14% of patients had liver metastasis as baseline, and around 10% of patients had EGFR mutation. In fact, this is the class of patient who initially were treated with EGFR TKI and then progresses on it are very difficult to further treat and achieve good response at. So this was the class which was included in this study. Overall survival was almost 6 to 7 months more in at ABCP arm compared to carbopacli bevacizumab. 12 months overall survival was 67% versus 61%, and 2 years survival was 43% in ABCP, that is experimental arm, compared to 34% with a significant hazard ratio. Overall response in intent to treat population was 56% compared to 41% in carbopacli bevacizumab. If we subclassify the response according to PDL1 expression, it was highest in ABCP group, which was nearly 70%. That means 7 out of 10 patients had responded to the treatment compared to nearly 50% in carboplatin, paclitaxel, and bevacizumab arm. Even in subgroups which had low PDL1 expression or PDL1 negative, even in those classes, ABCP regimen fared better compared to the other 2 arms. So overall survival benefit was observed across all PDL1 subgroups with highest response and difference of almost 10 months reported in those cases who had high PDL1 expression. Now, the efficacy in key subgroups, that is EGFR, ALK, TKI, those patients who were extensively pre-treated with EGFR, TKI, there were 78% in this study, and they were also given ABCP arm, and it was seen that progression-free survival was still high in ABCP arm compared to the carboplatin, paclitaxel, and bevacizumab arm with a significant hazard ratio of 0.59. However, this hazard ratio was, this much response rate was not seen in arm A or arm C, which consisted only atezolizumab or only bevacizumab. So the response rate was consistently observed only when bevacizumab and atezolizumab were combined with chemotherapy. Overall response that was achieved was 71%, which is significant in a patient who has EGFR or ALK mutation and have been pre-treated with TKIs, while it was 42% in carboplatin, paclitaxel, and bevacizumab arm.
Neeraj, please wind up 2 minutes.
Yeah. I'm sorry, my slides are not moving. I'm verbally speaking that another key element was in liver metastasis, where progression-free survival as well as overall survival benefit was achieved in ABCP arm compared to carboplatin bevacizumab arm. And third factor which was important was in patients with high tumor burden, where a single longitudinal diameter or number of metastatic sites were included as parameters. And even in these classes, ABCP regimen fared better compared to the 3 drug regimen. So all in all, IM Power 150 study concluded that ABCP regimen is one of the frontline treatment options for those patients who are diagnosed with a non-squamous non-small cell lung cancer who are inoperable, and this is regardless of PD-L1 expression. And this is considered a viable treatment option to the current standard of care, which is chemotherapy plus Keytruda, or can be equally rated, although cross-trial comparison is not justifiable. So with this, I end my talk and I thank the organizers. I apologize for not being able to show my last few slides. Thank you.
It's okay, Neeraj. We always face some technical glitch in this virtual platform. It's a nice summary of all these 3 trials. And I think we'll take the questions in our panel discussions. With the interest of the time, we move to our second session. And I'm going to invite Dr. Kaushal Patel. He's a senior medical oncologist practicing in Surat for his talk on how he's going to treat metastatic lung cancer in 2022. So over to you, Dr. Kaushal. Please share your screen.
Thank you. Good evening to all of you. As Dr. Neeraj Bhai has covered lots of things regarding the atezolizumab, but some basic aspect how I can treat lung cancer, in fact, advanced lung cancer in 2022. We all know that the non-small cell lung cancer is further divided into the squamous, adeno, and others, that is large cell carcinoma. And later on, it has been divided with the multiple genetic aspects, predominantly RAS, EGFR, ALK, and nowadays with PD-L1. We all know that these are the markers which has been tested and has been utilized right now for a treatment aspect. Depends upon the positive gene, we can add on some treatments with positive results. And nowadays with biomarkers that can be utilized to use with the immune therapy also, particularly in non-small cell lung cancers. So nowadays in our practice, we send the samples together for EGFR, ALK, Roche, BRAF, NTRK, RAT, MAT1, or we can say in other words NGS with lung panel. Along with that, we can go with the PD-L1 testing for all biopsy specimen of non-small cell lung cancer. So depends upon the positivity of the molecular biomarkers. We have options of the treatments. We all know that in EGFR mutated patients, we have first line and second line TKI depends upon the mutation status, which include T790M also. The same thing correct in ALK positive patients also. Apart from that, all other mutations have definitely 1 or 2 drugs which can be utilized as a targeted molecular treatment options, which having a significant good result. And there are outlined the treatments options available with us in form of the chemotherapy or immune therapy. So if we see, these are the biomarkers which can be tested and which have definite percentage. Along with that, available options of the treatments which have first options right now to be used in a patients with positive mutations rather than chemotherapy or immune therapy. We have different mutations with different percentage of their presence and available drugs which can be used in that particular things. Just sorry, some technical issues. I will. Do you have a slide presentation with our team?
Yes, sir. We have your slides. We'll
Please,
share from here.
Yeah, because I have some problems with that.
No
So
issues,
move
sir.
ahead. Yeah, move ahead. Just hold on. Previous slide, can we have? Yeah. So when the patient is having problems with the tissue biopsy, we can now move ahead with the liquid biopsy. That is a cell-free DNA, and it can be having a minimal invasive procedures just to collect the blood and send the samples for the testing. And it can overcome the tumor heterogeneity. We have limitations in form of the sensitivity, that is 70 to 80%, and negative result is non-informative in this particular subset, even though the biopsy is positive. Next. Next. So already we have discussed that depends upon the stage of the patient, histology and available biomarkers, we have treatments option. Apart from that, some of the disease and patients related factors, that stage of the disease, brain metastasis, overall tumor burden, patient's comorbidity, performance status and age, these are the factors. Along with some of the factors like patient's wish and doctor's preference, along with the available options of the treatments in form of the social support as well as the financial aspect, which has been considered into the treatments of the patients with advanced non-small cell lung cancer. Next. So already we discussed that available tumor biomarker had its first line as well as second line treatments in EGFR as well as ALK positive patients. And when the patient is having other tumor biomarkers, we have options of the 1 or 2 drugs which outline the chemotherapy as well as immune therapy. Next. Now the patients who are driver mutations absence, we have nowadays very good number of the first line treatments options which include the chemotherapy plus bevacizumab, chemotherapy plus immune therapy monotherapy, immune therapy plus chemotherapy plus bevacizumab, chemotherapy doublets or chemotherapy plus immune therapy doublets. Next. And depends upon the availability of the options which has been used into the first line, we can use other lines into the second line, that includes chemotherapy plus bevacizumab and immune therapy if it is not used as a first line therapy. But if the patient is affordable and doing well, then the immune therapy drugs is being used as a first line treatments option in patient having a non-small cell lung cancer with metastatic setting and they're having no any actionable driver mutations. So once the disease progress over the first line checkpoint inhibitors, we have options of the treatments only in form of the chemotherapy or chemotherapy plus bevacizumab. Next. So this is the treatments guidelines in patients who having a PD-L1 positive or negative. If the patient is having more than 50% PD-L1, then we can use immune therapy alone or immune therapy plus immune therapy or immune therapy plus chemotherapy. Depends upon the choice of availability of the drugs and patient and doctor's preference. If the patient is having 1 to 49%, then options of the treatments is chemotherapy plus immune therapy. And if the patient is having a PD-L1 less than 1%, then we have options in form of the checkpoint inhibitors plus chemotherapy. Next. So now if we see the first line chemotherapy, checkpoint inhibitors monotherapy, that is immune therapy monotherapy, then we have basically 3 good trials. IMpower 110, Keynote 42, Keynote 24, all this shows that the patients who has been treated with immune therapy did better compared to the patients who did treated with the chemotherapy in all 3 trials. Next. And we have another phase 3 study, but still not approved as a first-line treatment option in non-small cell lung cancer, though is having a promising overall survival as well as PFS versus chemotherapy, and used as a monotherapy in non-small cell lung cancer. Next. Next. Yeah. So here we have 4 positive phase 3 study, which shows that the immune therapy as a monotherapy, we can be used in a first line therapy as a non-small cell lung cancer. That is a Keynote 24, Keynote 42, IMpower 110. In all these 3 studies, the PD-L1 positive patients will do better compared to the patient who has been treated with the chemotherapy. So either atezolizumab or pembrolizumab, they can be used as a monotherapy in patients having a PD-L1 positive non-small cell lung cancer. Next. Next. So this is already covered by Dr. Neeraj Bhai. Next. So IMpower 110, the patient PD-L1 positive has been treated in 2 groups, atezolizumab versus chemotherapy, carboplatin plus pemetrexed or carboplatin plus gemcitabine. Next. And if we see the overall survival, then there is a significant difference has been documented into the patient who are PD-L1 positive with hazard ratio is 0.59. Favoring the atezolizumab did better into the patient who have PD-L1 positive as a monotherapy compared to the chemotherapy. Next. And sometimes we are confusing with the method by which we are testing the PD-L1. But if we see the IMpower 110 subgroup analysis, then the atezolizumab did better into the all population with PD-L1 positive. Either it is a DACO, SP142 or SP263. In all group of the patients, if the patient is having positive with the PD-L1 and treated with atezolizumab, did better into the overall survival compared to the chemotherapy. So there is no confusion which method we did use for the testing of the PD-L1. Next. So these are the studies which has been already discussed. IMpower 130, 150 and Keynote 189. In that particular subset, chemo immune therapy combination or chemo immune plus VEGF inhibitors has been used with better compared to the patient who has been treated with only chemotherapy. Next. 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 Yeah, so already this has been covered 150 in previous talk. Next. So OS is definitely better into the patient population who has been treated with atezolizumab plus bevacizumab plus paclitaxel plus carbo versus beva plus chemotherapy. Next. Next. Yeah, so either in OS is much better into the patient who has liver metastasis and treated with bevacizumab when it was added to the atezolizumab. This is a subgroup and different different result point which has to be considered. So the combinations of the atezolizumab and bevacizumab when it combines with the chemotherapy, it shows significant OS benefit into the patients who have liver metastasis and significant disease burden. Next. 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 So already has been discussed that the 4-drug combination therapy is doing better into the high disease burden, including the liver metastasis. Next. So now the patient who has progressed over first-line chemotherapy, we have basically data in which the OX study where the atezolizumab did better versus docetaxel, nivolumab did better versus docetaxel in PMS and same non-PMS also. Next. And in Keynote 110, the patient who has positive PD-L1 did better into the PMS as well as non-PMS in all form of the study results. So we can say that even in the second line treatment options, when the patient has not been previously exposed to the immune therapy drugs, we can definitely use any of the immune drugs in a second line treatments options with positive result. Next. So here nowadays in 2022, we can say that the immune therapy is coming into the picture in each stage of the non-small cell lung cancer. We all know that since last 2 years in stage 4 disease, first line and second lines, we are using immunotherapy, any of the immune therapy drugs, either it is a pembrolizumab, neo plus TP, or atezolizumab monotherapy or atezolizumab plus chemo combination has came into the picture as a first line therapy. If the patient has not been used as a first line with immune therapy drugs, then we can definitely use in a second line, depend upon the study design and depends upon the TPS score. In stage 3, non-resectable, the patient who has been treated with the chemoradiation therapy, durvalumab, has now been used as a maintenance therapy with a positive result in form of the OS as well as local recurrence rate. And nowadays, in upcoming years, we have some data which guide us to use immune therapy drugs in a neoadjuvant as well as adjuvant stage 1 to stage 3 non-small cell lung cancer. Next. So these are some of the basics, how we can treat the patients in 2022. Thanks for giving me the opportunity, and thank you for patient hearing.
Thank you, Dr. Kaushal, for sharing your thoughts and treatment of non-small cell lung cancer in the current year. And as you mentioned in your last slide, like there is still studies ongoing on a neoadjuvant setting. And just for interest of everyone, we at our center is running a neoadjuvant immunotherapy studies in lung cancer, especially in stage 2, stage 3. The patient who's an operable lung cancer is our friend. So we are looking at patient population, how they respond to the immunotherapy neoadjuvant. So that study is since last 1 year we are going. Now, I have one question to you, Kaushal. Suppose if the patient is given immunotherapy at first line and they progress very rapidly, how do you choose your second line options in this particular patients? Kaushal. Kaushal Patel?
Hello, Ashish bhai. Can you repeat? Can you repeat?
Yeah. So suppose if the patient has been given immunotherapy at the first line and they progress rapidly in first evaluation, so what do you consider in a driver non-mutant patient?
If the patient has been used immune therapy in a first line and progress fastly, then definitely the prognosis of the disease is not so good. First, I would like to counsel the patient regarding the further results. And definitely, I would go for the second line chemotherapy if we have used any chemo combinations with the immune therapy, or we can use with the PEM carbo if patient is having adenoangiosis, if the patient is having PMS. In short, I have options of the chemotherapy only at that moment.
Okay, so there is one data of ramucirumab with docetaxel in fast progression. So I think I do consider this combination in this.
Yeah, chemo plus anti-VEGF.
Yes. Thanks for your presentation. And now we need to move on our next part of the today's virtual session. That would be a panel discussion. And I'm going to share my screen. I hope my screens are visible. I request all the panelists to please switch on your video for the active discussion. So we have a number of panelists: Dr. Akasha, Dr. Kalpesh Prajapati, Dr. Rushabh Kothari, Dr. Gautam Makadia, Dr. Jimmy Dadania, Dr. Pooja Tanna, Dr. Ankit Patel, and Dr. Ashu Agarwal. Ravind, I just want to confirm. I hope except Dr. Rushabh, everybody is there.
Yes, sir.
Sir, Amit here. Dr. Gautam Makadia will be joining shortly.
Okay, so please let me know when.
Yes, I will let you know. Sure.
Okay. So I think this is my disclaimer for going for further. As Kaushal is mentioned regarding the treatment options in current year, especially in that population, the patient where is no HTML mutations are there, I think we have a plethora of options, starting from the chemotherapy single agent, which is very common in our patient because most of the Indian patients cannot afford the high molecule. There's a data of combination of VEGF inhibitor with chemotherapy, or in the patient of high PDL population, this cancer immunotherapy monotherapy, or in combination if the patient is symptomatic, or there are also data of, as Dr. Neeraj mentioned, there's data of Empower 150. where the cancer immunotherapy with chemotherapy and anti-VEGF is there. And there are also data of, on the basis of checkmate studies, there is a combination of 2 immunotherapy agents, especially PD-1 inhibitors plus CTL antigen inhibitors. And also there is data on the basis of the ILA study where there's a immuno with chemotherapy, which is limited chemo. So we have a plethora of options in the first line. And the second line, we have there is a limited data, but whatever the data is mentioned, as we are discussing in the last presentation, if the patient is not receiving immunotherapy first line, there is a good candidate for using the immunotherapy in the subsequent line, maybe a single agent, atezolizumab or other immunotherapy combination. If the patient is received chemotherapy and immunotherapy upfront, I think, as we mentioned, either patient can afford for VEGF inhibitor with chemotherapy would be option, or single agent chemotherapy if the performance is not good. So I will start with the discussion and the own opinion, especially because lung cancer is a big portfolio and everybody is treating with the current standard of care, as well as there's a lot of clinical limitations, so their own experience. So let me start with our first talk with Dr. Jimmy. I think I'm meeting you first time through this virtual session, so let me start with you, Jimmy. So whatever the patient you're treating, so how do you choose your best treatment options for patient who present with advanced metastatic non-driver mutant in your clinic? Dr. Jimmy Dadani. Jimmy is there? Okay, so Jimmy is not there. Pooja, you can take this.
So Dr. Jimmy is there. Dr. Jimmy, can you please unmute?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, Jimmy.
So according to the mutation status of the
no, so I said the patient who's having advanced non-small cell lung cancer, no driver mutations there. So how do you choose?
So according to the PDL1 status, sir, if PDL status is available, then according to that we can choose the therapy further for these patients.
So you choose a PDL1 is the first criteria. Pooja, you have any different thought or you want to add something?
Yes, sir. As we have discussed earlier, our main goal in the stage 4 lung cancer, it is to increase overall survival and improve the quality of life.
Absolutely.
Sir, we consider the best treatment option based on the 2 factors. First is disease related and second will be patient related. So, sir, in the patient related factors, we do consider factors such as age, performance status, comorbidities, the desire, financial status, definitely. And in the disease related factors like histology, disease burden, what are the site of the metastasis, driver mutations present or not, or level of PDL1, if present or absent, and if present, how much is the level. So, sir, based on such all the factors, we choose the best treatment for the patient.
Okay, great. So I think you mentioned most of the points. And Kalpesh, you want to add anything has been missed? Kalpesh Prajapati?
No, I think yes, sir. No, I think yes.
Okay. Okay, and Ankit, anything about the contraindication of any particular agents?
Yeah, at present, whatever discussed is okay, fine. But particularly for contraindication, if driver mutation is positive, then we should think about. Otherwise, we go for immune therapy. If PDL1 is positive, TMB positive, even if negative also, MCD protocol, we can go ahead.
Great. Now, I'm talking about the contraindication for immune targeted agents like patient with autoimmune disease or patient having immunosuppressive treatment is a patient with transplant.
We have used in 2 patients. One is myasthenia gravis, and he had taken around 19 cycles of atezolizumab.
Okay, so these are the borderline cases where the patient in the low dose treatment, right?
But dose was for 10 mg/d. It was before 2.5 years.
Okay.
So that time, anyone patient was very trustful. That's why we tried, because before 3 years there was no strong data on steroid or myasthenia gravis patient we can use, but the patient was very trustful. So we and Dr. Tanvir, we both discussed and given. Even after that also, a second patient having an ILD. He is still on nivolumab since 8 months. ILD having a saturation around 90 to 93 on room. And we are giving, patient is already on EZA and Pisolon. But same patient, bladder cancer, still he's doing well.
So what was the dose of prednisolone for that patient who's receiving?
It was 20 mg.
20 MD in a day. Okay, so I think this is a very good platform, especially in the virtual level, because we can discuss our own experience. Because whenever we treat this agents, we have a limited experience, and I think with this kind of the discussion, we can come to know, like, even in the borderline contraindication, if the patient is no suitable option, I think immune agents can be considered with the due risk, and maybe closely monitor those patients if there any kind of toxicity or the response maybe lost because of these agents. We'll move to our next part. That would be how you predict the response of cancer immunotherapy, especially with immune checkpoint inhibitors. I think I know Dr. Anshul. So do you feel any specific biomarkers you select in your practice besides PD-L1 or any other thing? Or do you respect PD-L1 as a potential marker to select your agent in this category of the patients? Over to you, Anshul.
So I will go ahead with the PD-L1. So the platform maybe so it's Ventana, SP142, or maybe PharmDx 22C3. So as we know that now the recent studies, the sensitivity of the test and specificity of test is now equal. So I can use any of the platform, but the PD-L1 should be high to start immune checkpoint inhibitors.
Okay, so you don't feel like the platform is very important. Any of the platform you respect and start the treatment. And even if the patient's having any specific agent, even the patient is in pembrolizumab, you're comfortable with the SP142?
So for pembrolizumab, actually, the platform should be 22 CDX3, but I am comfortable with SP142 also.
Okay, I think involve Dr. Akash. What is your own thought of any choosing the immune partner and based on the platform, and what kind of the biomarker you consider? Dr. Akash.
Yes, sir. So for pembrolizumab, how trial was designed, and they used a platform of this 22C. But sometimes availability is issue for us, and for this IMpower study, they have shown that even if you use SP142 or another one, but the results are almost similar. It's not exact, but almost similar. So I think we can use any platform.
Okay. Did Gautam join, Ravin? Okay. So Ankit, you have a lot of immunotherapy agents. So do you feel any difference in the response of immune agent based on the platform, or you choose the agents like before sending like the platform, you're deciding the platform, you first clear which agent you're going to send. You're going to use that particular patient, like in pembrolizumab, you can use the 22C3 or SP263. Or if you're using itolizumab, you'll prefer SP142. So, do you very clear, or you'll also respect like what Anshul is saying?
No, I will go for a good agent. If I am thinking about using Keytruda, then I will definitely go for Daco. For lung cancer, I will happy with Ventana also, because you can't do a two method, either itolizumab or depending upon drug. But Ventana is okay. 263 SP. I am comfortable for lung, but rest of the tumor, depending upon the immune therapy agent, what I want to choose, I will go for the particular method in that indication.
So now we have various labs. There are the lab we are doing the Daco platform. The results coming the same time when you are doing Ventana also. So if you want to use pembrolizumab, do you still prefer other Ventana, or you are okay like Daco is there, like Core is doing Daco, so you can get the sample done in Daco?
Injection दिया था, tablet दिया था.
I will if I in mind for lung, I will happy with SP263 because it will give an option of the both Keytruda and itolizumab. But rest of the thing, like I particularly want to use a Keytruda, then definitely I will prefer go for Daco.
Okay. Any experience of TNB? Anyone? Kalpesh, do you have in use TNB as a marker for selecting the immunotherapy agent at this moment? Kalpesh, you have to unmute yourself. I think the Kalpesh is not there. Anshul, you can take this. TNB.
Yes, I'm not used as TNB as a biomarker at present to start any immunotherapy.
So anybody is having this? Akash and Apollo, you have used TNB in some patients? Any of the?
No, sir. I checked for 1 or 2 patients. It was low. Otherwise, I have not started treatment as per TMB yet.
Okay, because now many other indications the TMB is coming, even in the esophagus, and there is the data is coming. Like the patient TMBI you can still use. So especially in the lung cancer, I think there are the data where you're using the combination of 2 IO agent. The TMB is the potential marker, but I think still the limitation is the standardizations. We have a no definite cutoff point. Some of the studies it is the 10 mutation megabase. Some have studies the 16 mutation megabase. So I think still we require more data, more clarity, and we have limitations in this test. And so I think in the near future will be more specific in choosing this agent. Currently, we are using PDL1 as a potential marker. So we know the immune efficacy is based on the various criteria and based on the PDL expression. There are other criteria related to the host factors and immune-related adverse events. So all these criteria is helpful in the deciding agents. Not only the expression, the host criteria, and some of the patient who their immune system is so activated, we can use a lot of toxicity. So that is one of the limitations. But still, currently, PDL expression is one of the major criteria to start deciding the choosing the immune agents. So I'll start with my clinical case. So this is the 40-year female. Ravin, can you take care of the background noise? Yeah. So she's a female with the passive smoking history, presented with a cough, breathing difficulty, and loss of the weight. XHS was done with a lesion in the left lung with good performance. Biopsy was suggested of squamous cell carcinoma, no driver mutation. And PDL1 testing was done with SP263 Ventana, and reports came as that 75% PDL is high. And the patient has been further workup and considered as a metastatic disease. So I will start with the discussion with our panelists. What would you prefer agent in a patient of good performance status with high PDL1? Let me start with Dr. Jimmy. You are there? Or Pooja, you can take.
Yes, sir. With metastatic cancer and PDL1 63%, I would like to start with immunotherapy, monotherapy as a first-line treatment.
Okay, great. Anshul, what immunotherapy you would prefer in this patient if you want to use as a single agent?
So, so in this case, I will prefer pembrolizumab Keytruda.
Okay. So based on the Keynote 024 study, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Akash, what is your experience of atezolizumab in this setting? Have you used atezolizumab monotherapy?
No, yet I have not used atezolizumab immunotherapy as monotherapy.
But you consider this could be an equal option?
Yes, I would consider, especially to financial is cheaper.
Okay, so I think we have the data, especially the category 1 recommendation, we the current guidelines of NCCN. We have 3 options in this category, and single agent atezolizumab, pembrolizumab, and cemiplimab. All 3 are there, but unfortunately, cemiplimab is not available. And cross-trial comparison we can do, but the only thing is, as Akash mentioned, if you look for the cost effectiveness, atezolizumab is more patients, I think, money-saving agents. Anybody use a combination of IO with chemo in a patient of high PDL1? Kalpesh, do you use combinations in high PDL1 or anyone?
No, as of now, I have no experience of using any IU in patients practically.
So I think just to interest of everyone, only if the patient having a very high tumor burden, patient is symptomatic because the image time. So that's the only combination. Otherwise, single agent mono is the standard of care. And now this is the point which we have already discussed. So everyone is comfortable with or any specific platform. Like, Kalpesh, do you use any particular platform, or do you yes, any come with the report and then you can start immunotherapy? Yeah, Kalpesh. Okay, Jimmy, you're there.
Yes, I think we can use the DACO as it is checked for both the drugs. So I think it will be easy option to choose any drug. Or we can, if we are planned to use one specific drug only, then we can send for the specific platform for the PDL1 testing.
Akash, but I understand when you decide the agent, like you want to use what kind of immunotherapy agent, I think that's the best way you to choose the platform. So if you want to use pembrolizumab, I think DACO would be better. But Ventana gives a liberty of choosing any of the checkpoint inhibitors. So you can use SP263, 142, and Ventana, and you can, because we have data of pembrolizumab, even the SP263 also. So I think Ventana would be easy as far as the choosing the agent, if you're not sure. But if you want to use only pembrolizumab, I think the most of the study prefer only DACO. If anybody is in any different opinion. Okay, so this is the data of atezolizumab. This has already been mentioned by Dr. Neeraj and Dr. Kaushal. The single agent atezolizumab monotherapy in PD-L1 high patient where the TC3 and IC3, there is a median OS is 20.2 months compared to 13.1 months chemotherapy. And if we see the OS benefit in pre-specified PD-L1 biomarker analysis and PD-L1 high patients, if you see whether it is performed in SP142, SP263 or 22C3, I think in all three settings where the PD-L1 is high, I think the median OS ranges from 19.5 to 20.2 months. So so for atezolizumab, I think the platform doesn't matter. You choose any of the platform, they will get a benefit irrespective of the platform. As far as the toxicity is concerned, I think immunotherapy, as we all know, is much safer than chemotherapy, except for some issues. And this is our direct, indirect comparison with the three key studies, BABAR 110, Keynote 024, and Keynote 042, where the atezolizumab, pembrolizumab is compared. And I think there is a little bit difference in the both the studies, except for like the primary endpoint, which is the PFS for Keynote 024 studies. And the most of the majority of the patient is the high PD-L1 Keynote 024, while in Empower 110, it is PD-L1 high is 35% of patients. There is more liver metastasis. So this is the pre-specified criteria, and this study has been showing a benefit of immunotherapy with the compared to the standard of care. So especially in high PD-L1 population, if we see the data, the Empower 110 results is quite similar to Keynote 042. The median the OS is 20.2 months, which in Keynote 042 it is 20 months, and 1 year OS is 66% versus and the overall response rate is 38 versus 39% Keynote 42, and the grade 3/4 toxicity is actually 16% and 18%. In Keynote 024, there's a more OS, especially because there are more PD-L1 high patient, that is 30 months. But if you see the HR, it's 0.64, while in Empower it is 0.59. So this Empower result is very similar to Keynote 042. And there are also the data on the network meta-analysis of cancer immunotherapy in a patients in a mixed histology. And if you see in various agents, whether it is atezolizumab, nivolumab, a combination nivo plus ipi, pembrolizumab alone, and semipilimab, all studies shows it is definitely superior compared to the chemotherapy. So even in the mixed histology. And this also, there is also studies on meta-analysis for the as far as the safety of the various studies compared to the chemotherapy, and the treatment-related adverse events, especially the grade 3 toxicity, is much lesser with the immune agents compared to the chemotherapy. And as far as the treatment discontinuation is concerned, the Empower patient studies having relatively less toxicity and less discontinuation compared to the chemotherapy. So there is an indirect comparison of these immune agents in various studies, and this is the network analysis results. There are also comparison of the PD-L1 versus PD-1 inhibitors for any grade related immune adverse events, and you can see the Empower 110 and checkpoint studies have at least toxicity compared to the other agents, and there are also there is a forest plots of the risk ratio for PD-1, PD-L1 inhibitors and grade 3-4 toxicity, and also in this studies, the itolizumab is relatively safer compared to the other agents. So I think this is a very interesting data based on the toxic profile, because immune-related agents having a peculiar toxicity, and I think it is required a good experience and treatment if somebody is having a toxic, but most of the patient is tolerated very well. This is the second case, because in first case, I think there was no major discussion. We know high PD-L1 monotherapy is the standard of care. Combination if the patient is high tumor burden. This patient is having a 32-year male, never smoker, presented with a cervical lymphadenopathy with a weight loss and cough, and though major past medical history, and there is a family history of the father is having squamous cell carcinoma lung at the age of 67. The clinically patient is lung is absolutely fine. Only thing bilateral cervical node and largest node is 3 centimeter. You can see the patient having a PET CT scan, which can see the lesion in the left upper lobe, left lower lobe, as well as the cervical lymphadenopathy. So this patient is having a bilateral cervical node, left lower lung lesion, which is considered a metastatic disease. So I will start with the discussion with Dr. Akash. Now PET scan is showing lung lesion, bilateral cervical node. I will proceed. That will be your next work.
So it's a lower cervical lymph nodes only.
No, bilateral cervical node, bilateral.
Yes. Okay. So first biopsy, true cut biopsy will take from if lymph node is if palpable easy, then otherwise CT guide lung biopsy.
It's a 3 centimeter node as mentioned in the slide. It's amenable with the biopsy. Yeah.
Yes. And from biopsy from the lymph node. I don't suggest excisional biopsy. True cut biopsy is enough.
Okay. And do you prefer a biopsy from the node, or you would prefer a biopsy from the lung lesion?
From whatever is accessible, node is okay.
Node is okay. So anybody would differ? Anybody would prefer a biopsy for lung? Node, they don't consider it as a, because the diagnostic yield are low. Okay. So I think the biopsy is done, because this is one of the things which is very common, because lung cancer, by getting a biopsy, sometimes it may cause pneumotherapy. So as Dr. Akash mentioned, is accessible biopsy is preferred, but sometimes you may get a necrotic tissue or a diagnostic yield are low. So in that case, probably we need to go for excision biopsy. So this patient has been diagnosed with lung cancer, and the driver mutations is been discussed with the patient. So what kind of the driver mutation we consider? I think we'll start with Dr. Kalpesh. Do you prefer a limited panel, or you will consider for a broad panel for your patients when you ask for driver mutation analysis? Kalpesh.
Kalpesh is left, sir.
Okay, so Ankit, you can take this. I can see you.
We can go for broad panel, because now there are many new driver mutation, and also there are many clinical trials also going on. So I will go for a broad panel along with the PD-L1 testing for this patient.
So broad panel NGS with PD-L1 testing is your preference.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Pooja, in Rajkot, do you see what is the turnaround time of getting these results if you send this broad panel?
So till now, actually, I have not sent yet. But in Apollo Ahmedabad, we were used to send this broad panel by NGS.
Okay. So what is your turnaround time?
3 to 4 weeks, sir, around 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay. So anybody would consider starting treatment rather than waiting for the results? Anshul, what do you do in Surat? Do you send this molecular testing, wait for 3-4 weeks, as Pooja is saying there?
Sorry, it depends on the PS of the patient. So if the PS of the patient is, if the patient is having a huge burden of disease and he is symptomatic for that, like in dyspnea and all, so then I will prefer to send this panel, whole NGS panel, and start one dose of PEM carbo or paclicarbo. Till the time, if I will get the result, then I can shift over to based on these results.
Okay, so in symptomatic patient, you will consider giving chemotherapy, and only for low volume of the disease, you'll wait for these results, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Jimmy, you are there? I think Jimmy is not there. So
Yes, sir.
Akash, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So do you do this is as Pooja was there with you to start some treatment because 3-4 weeks is a long time. So as Anshul is saying, in the tumor burden patients or symptomatic patient or even a low volume patient, you will consider chemotherapy because it's 3-4 weeks too much for you.
Yes. So it's around 2 to 3 weeks. It will take turnaround time. But
Mhm.
yes, by that time, if patient is a smoker and heavy burden is symptomatic, I will start with the chemotherapy. If patient non-smoker, female patient, and mildly symptomatic, I start with the anti-EGFR drug. And if asymptomatic patient, I counsel them to wait for the proper plan of the treatment.
Okay. And especially also in elderly population or frail patient, you also do the same, right?
Yes.
Okay. I think this is discussed, but one thing from Akash, do you send for this broad panel or a small panel? Because small panel you can get a result in 7 to 10 days. So what do you follow? Because
it's a large panel, sir, and it's not always to target mutation, but I would I had one experience like one patient I sent. It's a large panel patient came in very bad shape and progressed very fast, and patient succumbed within 10 days. And after actually patient succumbed, patient came, it's a BRAF positive. So it just we come to know why it was a very bad prognosis, and patient give some low dose of chemotherapy but not respond at all. So at least we come to know why it's a bad prognosis. So we should send for the large panel.
So this patient was totally asymptomatic, and within 10 days the patient is progressed so fast. What you want to say like that?
No, the patient came in the bad shape and progressed very fast.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that is there. But I think in our practice we do start chemotherapy if the patient is symptomatic, large disease volume. The only thing is like in some patient there is effusion and you can just tap it out effusion and the symptoms is relief. So I think you have to clinically decide which patient you can wait and which patient you can go ahead. But I think there's one message I want to give. I don't start any anti-EGFR or anti-driver mutation based treatment until we have a driver mutation result in our hand. So chemotherapy is only for those patients who are symptomatic volume. In our practice, I actually my request for my radiologist to make it 3 blocks, because one for ISCs and one for PDL1 and one for the target. Because we send the 2 separate blocks, I think you can ask them to give early results, and because EGFR we can get it within 7 days. Now,
one problem actually sometimes the tissue will be lesser.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
If we waste the tissue in EGFR and ALK starting, so sometimes we don't have tissue for the NGS panel.
Yeah. So this is always there. If something
it depends if the patient is not so affordable to get an NGS panel, and we have to do some limited panels only.
Absolutely.
So,
in India, this is one of the major common thing. And even if patient can afford for the panel, I think patient cannot afford for the treatment because this rare mutation treatment is very costly. So once you discuss out of this 4 common panel, if you ask in the like RAD fusion or MET alternation, I think the therapy is very challenging and costly for those patients. So even the PDL1 also sometime, but as academic interest, we send all the patients because now with the broad panel, the cost is not that much. But the limitation is there if there is somebody is coming with the outside biopsy, with the, as Anshul mentioned, is if the tissue is one of the challenge. But if the biopsy is done our center, I think it is always advisable to get the more and more tissue and try to make 3 blocks. Because sometimes what happens if there is an undifferentiated tumor, the pathologist will tell you go for the ISC because they want to exclude the small cell and squamous cell carcinoma, definitely. And then you can subject for another block for PDL1 because PDL1 you can get in-house also. And the third thing you can send and even some patient you can send the blood together also. Anshul, tissue is there. So I think when there is a doubt, I think it is a good idea to send the blood also. At least a driver mutation you get in the blood also. Yes. In the liquid biopsy. What about the MRI brain? Pooja, so now you started your career. So whenever you see this lung cancer patient and feel the CT scan showing a metastatic disease, you start the treatment in asymptomatic patient, you'll do the MRI brain for all patients.
No, sir. Actually, I prefer to do PET CT scan only. If the
Rajkot patients are rich, all patients can afford PET scan.
Sir,
because of the Yojana, sir.
Yes,
Oh,
sir,
because
because
of the
Yojana.
Yojana. Okay, okay. So that I don't know because I don't treat Yojana patient. So I
Yes,
think,
sir.
okay. So I think that covers everything. So even if the PET scan is negative, anybody do the MRI compulsory in all patients or only in a small cell? Akash and Apollo, what do you do?
No, sir. If patient PET CT is okay and asymptomatic patient, I don't do for non-small cell metastatic settings.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. In a small cell, you will definitely do, right?
Yes.
Because you are PCI, whether it is BC or therapeutic, you can take a call after that. Great. Ankit, you will do the same in Surat? You treat the pain patient, right?
Yes. But we are not doing MRI in asymptomatic non-small cell.
You're not doing an MRI. Okay, great. So what I understand from if the PET scanning does, MRI is only in symptomatic patient. Small cell by default, all patients, but in non-small cell, I think if the patient is symptomatic, if the patient only CT scan, then probably we will consider MRI, right? And PET scan is done, we can ignore if the patient is asymptomatic. Great. PD-L1 testing. Patient is affordable, not affordable, or you will do by default all patients, or you will keep for those patients who can afford for immunotherapy. I think Jimmy is there. So Jimmy, you take this.
Yes, sir. If the patient is affording for the
Yeah,
immunotherapy,
then you are doing PD-L1
then we
testing,
should.
or you are doing
Yeah,
in
in
all
PD-L1 test, no, sir. We are doing the basic small panel. In our setup, the small panel is patient can afford the small panel. Large NGS panel, patient could not afford that panel. And PD-L1 testing, if patient is affording, then along with the NGS panel, we send it for the PD-L1 testing.
Okay, so affordable patient is there. Okay.
Yeah, right, sir.
Anshul,
Yes,
what
sir.
you will do?
So same, sir. If patient is not affording for the immunotherapy, sir, then I will not plan for PDL.
Okay. Ankit, you also do the same?
No, sir. We are doing PDL in all cases.
You are
because
doing all
yes, there is reason. Novartis has recently launched a coupon of 8500 rupees. They are covering 12 mutation plus PDL1. Okay, so 8,500 is not a big deal. Second thing, if PDL comes positive, then there are many clinical trials going all across India. We can enroll the patient in that also. So I will prefer to do PDL1 in this case, irrespective of an affordability, because we can offer a clinical trial option also.
Okay, so you are the research guy, I mean, so that's a good thing. But this is the recent. I think Novartis was recently, not before that.
No, recent,
Akash?
2 months, before 2 months.
Yeah, I know that. Akash, do you follow the same in Apollo, or you have a difference? Okay.
Yes, so after Novartis coupon, so for all patients, otherwise, if not affording, no.
But you know what is the limit? Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, Ankit and Akash, you know what is the limitations of this coupon-based molecular workup? Is anybody can know because
Yes. They are doing only NGS panel. Fish and all, they are not doing like fish.
their platform they're using, you know, they miss
Yes.
many of the mutation. They are doing
Yes.
only DNA based. They are not doing incomplete with DNA RNA based. So that's a limitation. I think that is another part we can discuss. It's not a good to discuss in this forum, but there is a limitation. So what I understand, everybody is using molecular testing in most of their patient whenever this is feasible, especially the tissues are there, PD-L1 testing for affordable patient, but I do all patient PD-L1 irrespective of theirs because the class of the patient we treat, I don't want to, and as Ankit is mentioning, trials. So we run a lot of trials, so we use in some of the patient the benefit of trials also. Now, this patient has been underwent this molecular testing. Now, results is showing EGFR positive TP53 co-mutations. And you know, EGFR positive patients, TKIs are the treatment driver mutation is positive. So we need to start with osimertinib. Osimertinib was given, but within few months, the patient having progression. So in terms of the patient having clinical progression, patient also having brain lesion, which is mildly symptomatic. So we'll start with Dr. Anshul. Patient of EGFR mutant positive on osimertinib, patient is progressed when now there is a new lesion in the brain. What do you will do?
So actually, sir, if the patient progress only in the brain and rest in other part of the body, there is no progression, then I will give RT to the brain and continue osimertinib.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
If there is progression in all the parts of brain, then if the patient is affordable, I will go ahead with ABCP.
You will go with the ABCP. Okay. So the PET scan in the lesions is also increased. So there is also extra cerebral disease is progress. So Ankit, what is your take on that?
Yes, sir. Definitely, I will change the treatment. And if finance is not an issue, then we'll go for ABCP.
Okay. So I will ask with Kalpesh. Kalpesh is not there, right? He left. Okay. So Akash, what do you consider a doubling of osimertinib in this scenario?
Sorry, doubling of osimertinib.
Yeah, 160 milligram brain lesion there. There's the data on that.
Okay. No, sir.
No?
No.
Sir, I think, sir, if there is only brain progression, then we can double the osimertinib dose to 160 mg. But in this case, of the progression is in the systemic also.
Yes, I'm coming in that part. So I am, and that's why I'm giving these options. I'm discussing with all the options, not only switching to the ABCP. You know, so I'm going to come with this question: ABCP. How many patients having using ABCP till now? So I will start this discussion. I will ask with later on. I will get from all of you the true answer. So brain metastasis is there. I think I would agree with Anshul. We can treat the brain, and we can if there is no systemic progression, we can double the dose. That is an option. But this patient having the lung lesion also increased, the brain we can treat with the radiation. And the point of discussion is also here. Anybody go for the rebiopsy on the lung lesion which is increased? Akash?
No, sir.
No? Okay. Pooja, you know, there's data of the transformation of breast pathology.
Sir, yes, actually, theoretically, yes, we can do, because there are chances of occurrence of new mutation as well as conversion from non-small to small cell carcinoma.
Absolutely.
So theoretically, yes, sir, we can consider.
Okay, Ankit will also agree with that. So around
Yes,
13,
biopsy, we are going for biopsy.
so 13% of the patient can go transformation to small. So there is a data on that. Okay, Jimmy, if you're there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so biopsy is the same. Okay, same histopathology, adenocarcinoma. Now you have an options. I mentioned some of the options, like continue with the same EGFR with the more doses, start chemotherapy, ABCP, or you can enroll this patient clinical trial, or other option which is in your mind. Tell me what you consider.
Sir, if the patient is financially affording, then we can go for the ABCP. If performance status is good, then we can go for the ABCP.
Okay.
But I have never used this regimen. Till
That
now.
is the honest answer.
Yes. Sir.
So anybody use post osimertinib ABCP?
No, with Beva, I have used chemotherapy multiple times, but ABCP, I have never used post EGFR.
So I have one patient who's retaking this combinations in 10 months. So I'm fortunate for that patient. Patient is doing really great. So
Sir, I want to ask one question. If the patient has a EGFR positive, and in the start of the treatment, if PD-L1 also positive,
yes.
So do you prefer osimertinib with the immunotherapy?
I think I will come in the next slide. I think there's a negative data using agents with the driver mutation positive. So I think that part I'm going to come. But definitely we'll use only single agent. Now there is always a discussion. I think if the EGFR as well ELK is positive, I would put another scenario, but we are not discussing because our total presentation is for non-driver mutation. So there is a tough scenario. I think we can discuss in some other platform, but as of now, we are focused on the non-driver mutation. And this particular patient, there is also the data, the immunotherapy, which is, I think, the Jimmy was asking. There is OS is actually negative. So 1.1 is the HR, so we should not use PD-L1. The chemotherapy is superior. And there are also one of the data there in EGFR mutation positive patient using the EGFR TGA, actually when they increase the VEGF production, and there is a more sensitivity to the VEGF inhibitor like bevacizumab and combinations. So as Dr. Neeraj and Dr. Kaushal has mentioned, the ABCP, they have been around 13 to 14% patients are the EGFR mutation positive, and that patient has been included. And there's a data of ABCP, in particular those patients, there is a EGFR positive, and they've been given this agent. The median, the PFS is around 10.2 months compared to the BCP. And arm A, which is atezolizumab with CP, is similar to the arm C, that is BCP. and the median OS is 29.4 months with ABCP, which is really fantastic, even better than the other population. Response rate, we know with the ABCP, as Neeraj mentions, the combination of 4 agent is around 70% response rate as compared to other arms, it is superior. So now coming to the discussion, what are the ideal population of the patient who receive this combination? So I think we'll start with Dr. Anshul. So which population do you consider ABCP your first line treatment? You don't consider any other treatment? Theoretically.
Theoretically, non-EGFR, EGFR wild type. Driver mutation wild type patients.
Driver mutation wild type you consider ABCP. Okay. Any other?
No, sir. No, just I'm asking. So for driver mutation wild type.
That you need to tell me. Which are the ideal patient population you consider ABCP is your preference model? Theoretically, what you can see, because practically limited experience for anyone.
I will prefer only post-osimertinib failures, driver mutation positive patients only.
Post-osimertinib. Okay, Pooja.
Yes, sir. To be start with, yes, sir. It should be adenocarcinoma histology. Then second, with disease burden more, patient would be symptomatic with the metastatic site disease. And third, liver metastasis, because it has shown that large 17% of the patient with liver metastasis. And sir, PD-L1, irrespective of the PD-L1, but it gives more benefit with PD-L1 more than 50%. So, sir, these 4 criteria I think should be considered before starting ABCP as a first line.
But PD-L1 is more than 50%. You consider combination or your single agent agent? Because
no, sir, a single agent. But if the PD-L1 is more than 50% and disease burden is high, then we can consider combination chemo plus immuno.
Okay, Jimmy, you have anything you want to add?
Nothing, sir. I will agree with the high tumor burden disease. That will be benefit more.
Okay. Ankit, you want to comment on anything?
PD-L1 positivity with high disease burden is my criteria for adenocarcinoma for ABCP.
Okay. And Akash?
Yes, sir. Same as Pooja said, but I'll prefer when it's PD-L1 is less than 50%, because so then it's a perfect patient, because above 50 we would like to use monotherapy. So less than 50 when we want to use adenocarcinoma combined chemotherapy, so ABCP will be better.
So I think it's a good comment for everyone, but you can see in the first line management of metastatic non-small cell lung cancer, non-driver mutant, you have plethora of options, as I mentioned in my first slide. Now, that what everybody's meant is absolutely right. In high tumor burden, we definitely want to use chemotherapy to come into the picture and combination of VEGF. And so that is definitely ideal. You can use the combination. But at the same time, you can also have an option of immunotherapy with chemotherapy alone also, rather than using the bevacizumab also. That is an equal option. But this was the last slide which we are discussing in post-osimertinib or post-EGFR TK progression. I think we have a very limited data, and the only data we have is the ABCP data, which showing a survival benefit of 29 months, actually really fantastic. So I think that is the ideal. And what about your thoughts on the subgroup analysis, which I think in our clinical practice, whether this subgroup analysis results are really reflective in our practice. So I think because of the limited use of this regimen, I look for the theoretical answer. What are the subgroup analysis we consider this agent? Because, patient high tumor burden, this is one point, but what are the subgroup analysis, especially for the liver metastasis? Ankit, what is your take on that?
For liver metastasis, definitely I will go for ABCP regimen, rather go for only immuno plus chemo combination in adeno. But my practical experience with 2 patients, frankly speaking, adeno, day 1 having not so much disease burden, only a single brain mets treated with SBRT. PD-L1 was around 2% and started ABCP. I found out only stable disease after 3 cycles, then repeat for another 3 months. But finding there is no response, even progress in brain, a patient. At present, I switch over the patient to the second line chemo, driver mutation negative. So, similarly saying second patient also, I didn't get so much response in ABCP. But I will require more experience for these things.
So basically, liver metastasis, the patients actually is a poor prognosis. Most of the patients are very aggressive, especially low PD-L1 patient, the 2% you mentioned. So I think these are the patients actually with bad biology, but I think we have a require more experience to comment on the broader perspective of this combination. And at the last, I just quickly go for this third case. The patient having multiple pulmonary nodules, biopsies, adenocarcinoma, driver mutation negative. The only thing which I'm to come to picture this patient is a mild renal insufficiency. The patient is diabetic, which is uncontrolled, and PD-L1 is 20% with SP142. So patient of metastatic lung, adenocarcinoma, non-driver mutant, diabetes, mild renal insufficiency with PD-L1 is 20%. What is, I think I'm not going to discuss the platform, but the only thing is what would be a treatment preference? I think we'll start with Pooja. 20%.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Here we can start with atezolizumab with nab-paclitaxel and carboplatin.
This on Empower 130, right?
Empower 130.
Okay. Anybody would comment on any other combination?
Single agent immunotherapy.
Single agent immunotherapy, Dr. Akash. 20% is sufficient?
Sufficient. Sufficient.
Sufficient. Okay, great. Ankit, you are
No, I will go for combination of immunochemo.
So you'll go for.
But if performance is not so good, then we can think about new combination.
Okay.
Or otherwise,
the performance is good. The only thing is mild renal issue. Yeah. Anshul, what is your take? Single agent or combination?
So in this case, so what is the disease burden, sir?
Disease burden patient is disease bilateral lung nodules. Patient is symptomatic, so patient, but is fit for the chemotherapy also.
So for dual, sir.
Yeah, you go for the dual. Okay, so I think I will agree with most of the panelists. Combination would be preferred, and we have a data of Empower 130, where there's a PFS as well as the OS benefit for combination of immunotherapy with carbonapaclitaxel. As the Pooja has rightly mentioned, the median OS is 18.6 months. Is really fantastic data. So I think combination, and this kind of the population where the steroid is a challenging, I think we can use this combination, and I think this is the actual right subgroup where we use this combination, right? And if you see the PFS and OS in various subgroup like PD-L1 low, PD-L1 high, PD-L1 intermediate or intended population, the HR is really significant. So you can use irrespective of all the population this combination. And at last, which is the area where you consider immunotherapy even in the patients that PD-L1 is very low? Ankit, you can take this. Low PD-L1 is low. Do you consider immunotherapy in your practice, or you ignore that?
If particularly for liver metastasis, I can think about using the ABCB combination.
So basically, if you see the data, even in the PD-L1 negative, the HR is always superior compared to the chemotherapy alone. So even in the pembrolizumab studies also, that is also even there. So I think I would consider irrespective of all PD-L1. So I don't respect PD-L1, though there will be responses more if the PD-L1 is high, but I think I cannot avoid the immunotherapy in my practice. So anybody has any comments? You have any difference? Are there any experience they want to share? I think immune agents are really doing good in our practice, and we have a more and more experience with the time, and we'll probably discuss with this kind of the seminar. We'll discuss our own experience, especially because the agents are quite costly, and I think with the limited use, we are sharing our thoughts so that everybody can update. And I thanks to all the panelists for their active participation, and for the Roche for inviting me for this session. And I conclude my moderation. I hand over to the organizers, Amit, for taking further proceeding.
Thank you so much, sir. It is a privilege to have you, sir, as a program director, and always a brilliant discussion around all the topics which has been laid down around lung cancer. I would like to once again thank you, sir, for your overall brilliant moderation and the overall guidance, and also to all the panelists and the faculty members, Dr. Kaushal Patel, Dr. Neeraj Bhatt, and all the eminent panelists for their wonderful participation. I will just take a couple of minutes, just 1 minute. I will not take much time because it's already dinner time, to showcase about a few glimpses of Tecentriq. So as far as not only lung cancer, Tecentriq has been approved in multiple indications. There are currently 8 approvals in hard to treat tumor types, starting with HCC, which we have recently been approved, TNBC, MUC, NSCLC, and extended stage SCLC. These are the 8 indications where Tecentriq has been currently been approved. As far as lung is concerned, as we have discussed at length today, there are 5 indications where we are approved. We have the largest approvals in lung cancer, in 3 approvals in first line, 1 in second line, and 1 in SCLC as an indication. And though cost was not a part of discussion today, but once again, we want to highlight that today we are the most accessible immunotherapy in the country today, with our flat 1+2 free vial patient support program. And not only that, to reduce the upfront cost of treatment, we have also introduced easy pay solution to the patient. So patients can pay the upfront cost in 3 divided installments. So that facility is also there. And the yearly cost of treatment with Tecentriq is the lowest amongst all the other immunotherapy, and it comes to around 22 lakhs, or 22.5 lakhs. So that's just to highlight the cost factor. This has been almost 40% economical than pembrolizumab and 15% economical than nivolumab on a year-long treatment, which has been. And not only apart from the cost, there is a care beyond medicine. We have been offering many services, which includes also one of the very big service, that is foundation medicine test, which is costing around 3 lakhs rupees to the patient. And that is one of the very next-gen sequencing tests which can identify the hidden driver mutations as well, and recommend the future course of therapy. So that is another service which is being offered by Tecentriq. So that's it from our side. And I think it was one of the very fruitful discussion we had today. And once again, would like to thank all the speakers and panelists, and also Dr. Ashish Kaushik sir for the overall guidance. So that's it for today's session. And we wish you a very good evening and a good night to every participants. Thank you so much.
Thanks.